Start your day.
It's 5 minutes after 9. So Spice FM has an AI, and our algorithm is called Avin.
Yes, he is. And he's looking out for you today in a good way because he's got 3,000 shillings this
Morning. Yes.
to give to you. What you need to do to order to get Avin's 3,000 bob is dial *544#. Now, when you do that, you'll find that option number 4 is for Go Monthly. When you send that to the system, it's going to give you many options and you will select the all-in-one. Now, the all-in-one has different options. You're going to spend a particular amount of money and you get different options in terms of what happens with talk time. Let's say you pick the one for 2,000 shillings. 2,000 shillings will give you 1,000 shillings, 1,000 minutes of talk time. It'll give you 2,000 SMSs. It'll give you 17 GB data and it'll give you free WhatsApp for a month. For 30 days, you can have this at your for your use. All right. And so why? Because you know what? The days of talking on the phone, sending messages, will not go because you do not have airtime, or trying to get online and you do not have bundles. That's over. Safaricom says, let's get into another era, shall we? Use a little bit of money at the beginning, or a lot of money at the beginning of the month, whatever it may be, middle of the month. Buy, talk, browse, communicate, and forget about it. Now, if you do
Live
that
your
today,
life.
Avi
Peace
will
of
give you-
mind.
Yes, peace of mind. That's what you're buying. You're buying peace of mind.
AI is giving you 3K.
AI will give you 3K if you do that. Send it. Not that everybody who does will send it on. He will use the algorithm to
pick
check
a winner.
and pick a winner.
Very good. Very good. Now, there are many places you have visited in this country and there are places you haven't visited. Have you been to Cherangani?
Have I been to Cherangani? No, I have not.
Yeah, you've heard of it.
I have.
The Cherangani Hills.
I've heard of them.
Eh?
The
Do you know which county it is in?
hold on. No. I should.
Somebody who was an MP for this area in the 90s is our guest. Okay? He was a member of parliament. In those days, when the opposition MPs, he was among those in the opposition. Then, when NAC formed government, he was in government. He was a minister in charge of food security, agriculture in this country, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, he's an elder. He sits, he looks, and he says, I see the sun rising from the east.
Oh, wow.
And by end of day today, it shall rain. And it rains. Kipruto Arapkiro, good morning.
Good morning to you, sir.
How are you doing?
Salama kabisa.
Good to have you here again.
Yeah, I thank God for it. Yes, and actually I was in the 80s, the 90s, and up to 2007.
You see?
I served for 20 years.
It's bugging me. It's bugging me and I don't want to Google.
My county is Trans Nzoia.
Kitale.
Yeah, Kitale is our district headquarters.
Well done. But what is the name of the county?
Trans Nzoia.
Very good.
Yeah.
He's a first learner. She's a first learner.
Very well. Very, very good. So, Trans Nzoia County, Cherangani Hills.
Yes.
Karibu sana here.
I thank God.
We want to talk about, you've been in politics for long. You served in parliament, you served in cabinet, you have sat at the executive, you have looked at this, you've even chaired and led a political party.
Yeah.
And that political party ended up being the ruling political party with you outside.
Yeah.
But now, you're looking at your former party,
Yes.
now as a ruling party,
Yes.
and we are seeing fractures at the very top.
That's true.
We'll discuss that.
Asante.
City has said hi to you, City Muga,
Oh,
but he's not
how
in
is
today.
he?
We don't know.
With the proverbs.
We told the guy, you go and rest, because he said, I want to go and rest. So the one thing that we're not doing is not disturbing him.
Oh, wonderful.
But he left us with the Proverbs. And he told us for this week, the Proverbs will be from Senegal.
Ah, Senegal.
So listen to the proverb and give us your interpretation. 3 kinds of people die poor. Those who divorce, those who incur debt, and those who move around too much. 3 kinds of people die poor. Those who divorce, those who incur debt, and those who move around too much, a.k.a. Tanga Tanga.
Eric, I don't know. I don't know whether I will have the right interpretation.
There is no wrong interpretation.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the hallmark of the statement is that you should be careful about what you do. Because at the end of the day, a divorce is not desirable, but at times it has to happen. I thank God I'm not in that category. I still got my wife. for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And we incur debt almost every afternoon, whether it's Fulisa, Mshwari.
Something.
And the third one is Tanga Tanga. Of course, if you are aimless, you are not careful about what you're doing, then you will die poor. Yeah, you must be careful about what you're doing.
So it's like choices of consequences.
That's it.
And you should be prepared for the consequences.
For the consequences. Once you engage in a certain activity, you must be ready for the full hog. Yep.
You know, in the previous hour, we had Senator Cherargei here, of course, you know that.
Yes, Senator for Nandi.
For Nandi.
Yes.
And one of the things that he said is what he's seeing now happening, he called it unfortunate, uncalled for, and he used very many other words. You know, people are just perambulating and speaking, and it has no weight. It's politics out there. There's a lot of work to be done. It's not being done. And this is with regards, of course, to the politics around, you know, the president, the deputy president, members of the national executive and in the legislature from the ruling coalition, Kenya Kwanza, and their friends now who are in ODM. What do you make of what's happening in the country right now?
Well, I say political bad manners, because some of these things we saw it coming. Part of the reason why I left UDA is because I believed, I've done a bit of industrial psychology, the two characters, the president and the current deputy president, are people whose character cannot be compatible for such a long time. I remember I told the president and a battery of other guys who were around the president at that time, because we had 4 candidates, and Rigathi Gachagua was one of them. And I told them, you will not last with him for 5 years, because the two of them are too combative. And you know, even in a family, I thank God you talked about divorce. In a family, it's not because we are good. Perhaps for my family, my wife is more tolerant than I am. And therefore, we've been managed to stay for almost close to 40 years together. In a family, there must be somebody who is more tolerant, somebody who is more understanding. So that when you have a hyper husband, the wife must be tolerant, very calm, and vice versa. That's how families survive. And of course, political conveniences that we have will, of necessity, mean one must be able to be tolerant. You remember the only person who has kept his vice or deputies well is Kibaki, because Kibaki was very tolerant. That's why the 3 vice presidents that he had, none of them complained much about Kibaki. And Kibaki respected the institution, even including us ministers. If other people, I remember there was a case of somebody, some ministers wanted to transfer coffee board from a ministry. So at the full length of time, he asked them, but where is the guy who is responsible for this particular ministry? I was called at 9 o'clock. The following day I went to State House, and I did not have a problem. I told him, the only thing that we need to do is to amend the law. Then he said, why are we amending the law? If it is in this ministry, it's the same government. If it moves, we have better things to do rather than to take the legislation to parliament to transfer a parastatal. That is Kibaki for you. But many people don't respect people they work with. Now, the 3 of you having been here for long, I give you a lot of credit, because people cannot tolerate each other. Yeah. So that is our problem.
You saw this.
I saw this, and that is the reason I left.
Are you saying others did not see it?
I don't know. There could have been conveniences. Ama kuna madeni. I don't know. Because you see, I told them, yes, he can play another role because I respect him. I respect him, but I will advise him down the road about the way I see politics today. I saw that he was not going to last. That relationship was not going to last. Kindiki, Alice Wahome, or Muturi could have done better. That's my opinion, because they would be willing to listen to the boss. Because you see, Ruto is also a micromanager and too domineering. Rigathi is also combative. So when you combine the two, they tell us in industrial psychology, that is totally incompatible pair.
Usually, by the time somebody outside whatever little caucus or circle you are in is telling you something, usually you have an idea about that same truth.
Yes.
So the likelihood of both of those parties being aware of what could happen down the road is pretty high. Why would they still decide to make that decision if they knew there was a possibility that they could split ways down the road? Why?
I do not know. Possibly they were hoping. Because even the president you had in Kasarani, I didn't say that. He said himself that he's not going to treat his deputy the way he was treated. But perhaps it took more than 5 years for Uhuru to tolerate William Ruto. But this situation has become intolerable after 1 year. In fact, what we are seeing now is a epitome of what has been happening. Lack of political hygiene.
This political hygiene, if we were to define it, because we are talking about people, individual characters, and a job that needs to be done to serve the public. And the president has actually recently used this term, servant leadership. You are in this position to serve the people. You have been given the honor by the people of Kenya to serve them. So it's not about you.
Yeah,
It's not even about your boss. It's not about your subordinate.
Yes.
It is about the people.
Yes.
So why would we end up having...
The problem, you see, there is what we call a habit. When it is repeated by the same individual, it becomes a character. And when there are more characters behaving the same way, it becomes a sort of a social challenge. And if there are more people in that kind of social arrangement, it becomes a subculture. And likewise, it will grow into a culture. So the culture that we've grown in Kenya for the last 60 years is that we do not respect the people who elect us. Immediately they elect you, you think you are the boss. You forget that they elected you because there were certain aspirations they had, certain hopes. And those hopes, you dash them by behaving in the opposite way from what they expected you to do. So that is it's become our culture. It is not just William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua. If we don't watch, any other arrangement may almost precipitate the same. That's why we as ordinary citizens, we must rise to the occasion and say no. Yeah, no to impeachment, no to all these bad manners.
You know, the president, when he was deputy, you know, those days he was asked the question, what would you do to make sure that your deputy does not face the same kind of thing that you faced? And of course, you've seen, you know, clips have emerged in an interview with Joe Ageo, him saying that can never happen. During the presidential debate, Yvonne Okwara and I asked him the same question. I mean, you're saying that you have gone through all these things, but you've been in office. Would you do the same? And he said, no, we wouldn't. What we fell short of is asking him what needs to happen to control a president so that a president does not mistreat a deputy president.
Go off the rails.
All right? So what is it? Do you think we need legislation? What do we need to do to infuse this thing that we are now calling political hygiene?
I think the most important thing is that we must think about our society itself, because I'm sure even today as we are here, the country is polarized. There are those who believe the deputy president is right, and there are those who believe the president is right, and therefore the deputy must, of necessity, be impeached. So it is become more of a culture. I ran the risk of repeating what I've said before, that upon taking over Tanganyika, Mwalimu Nyerere, 6 weeks later on, he resigned to tour the country, to inculcate in them the values of a nation, what it means to be a Tanganyikan. After 1 year, he came back and he became the president of Tanzania. He allowed Rashid Kawawa to take over for 1 year. And later on, he put in school curriculum to inculcate the values of being a Tanzanian. And that is how that country is. Today, they may be lower in terms of GDP than us. But because of that unity and good manners, they are likely to do better in the next 10 years. Because we are spending a lot of resources in fighting. Listening to the deputy president last week, I realized there is something that we are not seeing. The government is frustrating itself from performing, because there are certain activities he was given to do under gazette notice that the president himself signed. Later on, those activities were frustrated despite the fact that we spend billions of shillings in that particular department. That is something that is worrying me. Also, the last term of the two, Uhuru and Ruto, they wasted a lot of time in fighting And in the process, they frustrate the public.
And the resources. Because there was resources that were spent in the office of the deputy president, who was ineffective in delivering any job, getting any job done.
When we look at, I mean, coming from your position, you served in government, still, I mean, a political honcho even till now. And we still have to ask the question, really down the line, after several, years of administration of government, that there still cannot be a clear distinction between service delivery and politics. And I think I have to ask the question then, when people go into these positions, is it really for the good and the development and the progression of the country? Because if it is not from the get-go, there is no way you can ask somewhere down the line for somebody to please change their intent.
That's true.
If their intent from the very beginning was to see what they could garner for themselves or some kind of search for political expediency, there is no way we're going to ask, please change your proverbial political spots somehow in the middle of the game. So it seems as though we are dealing with quite a number of people whose intent was never for economic, developmental progression of Kenya.
Yeah. We go back to the same society because today, if you found me driving a Vitz, you will say this guy was a minister and is driving a Vitz. Or if you found me in a taxi. Because our society has almost prescribed that once you get into a position of privilege, you must display certain level of acquisition that is beyond your capacity. But in other societies, people are proud of the legacy that you leave, and at times spend a bit of time listening to some of the stories emanating from Tanzania. They seem to respect people who served the country with distinction, as we seem to respect people whose time in office they were able to acquire something they are totally incapable of acquiring in another arrangement. This therefore means when somebody gets into politics, he's not getting to politics to serve. He's getting to politics to have primitive accumulation of wealth to the extent that at the end of the day, they are respected for doing so. Today, if you went to Rift Valley, and I can say this without any fear of contradiction, the backyard of President William Ruto, you can accuse him of Adani, G to G, any other accusation, but they will not take it. They say he knows.
Hii ni siasa
unaleta siasa na anajua kutafuta mali. Yeah. So you cannot accuse him of corruption. Accuse him of anything else, but not corruption.
So is it the people?
It's the people. We are the problem. We the people are the problem. We don't seem to see anything wrong when one of our own is doing the wrong thing, as long as we'll partake part of the loot that he has gotten from national coffers. Today, up to today, we are divorced, alienated from the government. We don't believe the government is part of our heritage. We still look the government as another animal, alienated from our own daily life. So if you are looting from the government, you are doing well. Because you are not stealing from us.
The recent demonstrations showed that the people actually know and they don't like what's happening. They acknowledge, they appreciate, they don't like. It was started, yes, by the younger generation, but it got widespread support.
Yes.
It says that people were expressing themselves and saying, you know what, we have just been tolerating. We've been sitting back and tolerating and hoping that, you know what, you guys will change. We've been giving you these signals once in a while. You go into parliament, we vote you out, we bring in somebody else because we are thinking you are behaving the other way. And now this one voice was saying, enough is enough. They were saying this opulence that you're showing, no. They were saying this, wanton theft of public resources or misappropriation of public resources and the lack of service delivery, no. If you look at even the conversations that are continuing now, a raised level of accountability, people are saying no. So people are aware.
People are aware, but we have not sufficiently owned the process.
Yeah.
We are still almost like, what do I say, passive participants. Some of the people in this country. The GNCs, and I hope when they get to time that they get into certain offices, and I pray sooner than later, they will be able to keep up with what they did for the last, on the 25th of I think 25th of June.
Yes.
And thereabout. Because it was a departure from the past. It was non-tribal, non-class. You know, they didn't have that we come from this place, we come from Kayole, we come from Karen, we come from Runda. For them, it was that this is enough.
Kimani Ichung'wa was so class.
Yeah?
Kimani Ichung'wa was so class. He used to
Oh,
there
no,
KFC and...
Ichung'wa sees things I don't see. Possibly smarter than me.
All right, go on. On a light note. Yeah. So they came out and they were united. They were representing a cross-section of Kenyan society.
That's true.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And they're also representing, the Kenyan society. They didn't see tribe. They saw themselves as Kenyans who deserve better than what the government is giving them. Yeah. And that should be the way. We hope it will actually be ingrained in our blood, so that we say no, no, no. Because you see, like what we talk about, private-public participation, the whole problem is lack of management. Yeah. If you are to improve management of public resources, there are enough people to buy into this, and you can sell whatever you want to sell to the public, as long as they trust that the management is right.
How do people, and I think we continue to ask this question because we come from a place where it's obvious that there has to be citizen-centric governance. And even if you're not the ones, putting your signature, that it has to be with the citizen in mind that these decisions or these actions are taken and made. But how do people, we do, like you said, you have some citizens who are very, very, plugged in. People will work in their community. People will take matters to court. People will look for judgments in areas of jurisdiction that they see things are going wrong. People will. But it would seem as though the majority of people, we just kind of sit back and hope that things will get better. And we talk and we complain and we say that things don't work right. But how do we actually get involved? And I'm going to come back to your example. When you were, as a minister, did you expect that Kenyans would speak up and say, no, we cannot go in this direction? Or was the general thinking that, okay, they'll make noise for a few days, but then after that, they'll keep quiet?
Yeah, at times when you're inside, you don't know what is happening outside. Sincerely, when we are at the ministry, perhaps at times you have a lot of information and you think you are doing well, only for the public to say no. And of course, I had a share of my own failures and successes. So as a minister, yes, at times you think the public is wrong, but in the overall, you realize the public was right. Because at times there is disinformation, at times there is propaganda, and at times there is some lack of information. And of course, it is your duty, if you are a minister and people don't know exactly what you are doing, it is your duty to tell them exactly what is happening and why certain things are happening in that particular manner. But yes, the president admitted that there was a lack of effective communication, but it was not just lack of effective communication. Corruption is there, and he admits there is corruption in government. Of course, display of opulence, lagis, and a bit of a measure of arrogance was very evident. And I thank God the GNCs actually were able to teach them how to behave. Some of them actually were no longer flying the flags before they were sacked, because they realized the country was at crossroads, and it was the country was outraged by their behavior. But what I still believe is lacking is a clear demonstration. When you talk of public participation, we need to redefine public participation in a way that the public is actually engaged in a more meaningful way than is the case today. This is a constitutional requirement that was not there during our tenure. But this constitutional requirement does not seem to be respected the way it ought to be respected, including some of the issues that are around the table. Yeah.
Why do you think it's not being respected? Do you think it's the status quo resisting change?
It is It is actually from the system itself. And with the risk of looking like some bitterness with the president, he is the person responsible. In what we call change behavior, or behavioral change, it translates better when it starts from the top. When the top is right, the rest of it will realign itself with the top. Yeah, and that's why during Kibaki 1, people arrested policemen for almost soliciting for a bribe.
Yeah.
Because they knew Kibaki was no nonsense person. But the current situation is that if you are not gifted in going around the corners and getting what does not belong to you from the public coffers, then you are not respected. You remember 15 cases that were dropped just because there was a new regime, as if those cases were sort of engineered politically from the previous regime. What happened to those cases? They were all dropped.
Yeah, we were told they had been engineered.
Well,
politically
engineered in the first place, and that's where they
then you
ended up
take
where they
somebody
were.
to KRA who had a case with KRA of 17 billion. I don't know.
9:30, let's take this break. Kipruto Arapkirwa is currently a governance expert. He has been a minister, he's been a member of parliament for many years representing Chiranganyi constituency, and now he looks at things from a vantage position and says, okay, with the benefit of experience, I can see and I can interpret some of those things that are happening. We are asking him to interpret for us what is happening in this country